Hey folks, in this interview, it's all about documenting climate change with Mette Lampcov. This is TWiP. Hey, welcome back to another episode of This Week in Photo. I'm your host, Frederick Van Johnson. Today on the show, I have the distinct pleasure of chatting with Mette Lampcov. She is amazing in many respects. You're going to find out a couple of them in this interview. The main thrust of this interview, though, is climate change and some of the work she's doing to raise awareness of that issue with her camera. So, Mette, welcome to the show. How's it going?
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
No, I'm excited to have you. We've got a lot to talk about. So through the eyes of your camera, the planet is under siege, right, in many ways. So this project, as people can see in the blog post for this episode, this project that you're working on called Water to Dust. Give me the gist of that project and how it came to be.
It really came to be from just the experience of living through the drought that's about 7-8 years ago now. Everything around me was turning brown. The water bills were going up, and there was water restrictions. And I really felt I needed to learn. I was curious what was going on. At the same time, I was accepted into a mentorship program, and it was sort of the perfect curiosity to keep moving along with and accepting this story. Mm-hmm. I think that's sort of what brought it on to begin with.
It's just like any other project, curiosity, right? Brought it on. And it's interesting. So you live in California right now, in Southern California. And as we were talking before offline, you were telling me that you narrowly missed the wildfires that Southern California recently experienced. Take us through that sort of experience a little bit, because that obviously a contributor to your passion for documenting climate change, right?
Yeah, I've lived in Malibu till 3 months before the fires.
Wow.
And I have evacuated many times. I have been in Malibu while there's fires, and I lived in a part of Malibu where there was kind of an expectation that the fire wouldn't quite reach there, or the firemen would protect us. So it was considered sort of a safe area in many people's minds. So when the morning of the fire, I can't forget, because I actually had a friend from Malibu that was coming to stay in my house because I had to go out of town to take care of my dogs. And I texted her at 7 a.m. going, get out of bed, leave. And I wasn't really concerned about what I had to do. I just wanted to make sure she was leaving, because what I was seeing online, on Twitter, on images that were coming out of there, just looked way beyond anything I'd ever seen before.
Yeah.
And I think from working on climate issues and I haven't documented fires before, but this was a different monster than we had seen before in Malibu. Yeah, so it's a story that was very close to home. It was an event that affected every friend of mine, everybody I know, and has profoundly affected me.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when you tell people that, yes, I live in Malibu, California, some of the most expensive real estate on the earth, right? It's interesting because I've seen this. There's a different sort of perspective that a lot of Americans have, or people around the world have in general. They're like, those people just go buy another house, right? They're in Malibu. There's probably one of 12 houses they own anyway, when that's not really the case. And it's a psychological sort of impact, right? Did you experience that sort of the prejudice?
I had massive, and prejudice is probably a really good word to use.
Yeah.
First of all, there is definitely a section of Malibu that has incredibly expensive real estate, probably some of the most expensive in the world. Mm-hmm. But there is also just normal people who go about their normal lives and normal incomes. To give you a perspective, real estate in LA, in some perspective, is more expensive than some of the areas in Malibu. And a lot of the people I photographed are people that often don't have enough insurance to cover this, and also on another note, I don't think we should decide on what we photograph depending on the financial situation of the people. I think If you lose your home, you lose your home and all your belongings. And that was a really big disconnect when I tried to tell this story. There was this kind of thing, oh, well, it's Malibu. And I would even have people say to me as I was driving, like, one evening I had dinner with friends, and I text them and said, I'm running late. I need to have a shower because I stink. Mm-hmm. And they were like, well, we like eating dinner early. Can you, try and make an effort? I'm like, I need a shower. And it's because it stunk of ashes. And when I got to the dinner, which was 6 weeks after the fires, they asked me if people had started to rebuild yet. Well, it took 8 to 9 months to clean the debris up.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody is rebuilding. And on another note, I just saw a friend of mine who's an architect. She just had, I think, the 8th house cleared, meaning out of, I think it's 450 homes that actually physically burned. There's 1,500 structures, but I think it was 150 homes in Malibu. Structures can be schools and many other things. The 8th house has been cleared, meaning it's now 9 months later. 8 houses have been okay to start building and starting updating code. Just to give you an idea.
That's scary and depressing at the same time. One of the things that I'm sure especially people that were affected by the fires may remember was the president came down and visited and gave some advice about what Californians could have done to prevent the fire. Now that I have you on the hot seat, I'm interested, literally on the hot seat, I'm interested to know, how did you take that? Because I think you said something about, you should have raked the leaves or something like that, right? When people, like you said, are suffering through, burning real estate. What was your feeling about that?
The honest truth is I can't exactly remember what he said, but I just remember laughing and shrugging and going, he's as always confused and doesn't know and hasn't read up or studied what he's talking about. So it's a clueless person, essentially speaking. And I think he was really referring to, if I'm remembering correctly, forest health, in the fact that, there was a connection to that, and forest health is a different issue, but somewhat connected to wildfires. But yes, I mean, he even came to Malibu, but I can't remember what he said there. But I remember standing on the side of the road in Malibu, and I was actually standing at a roadblock because nobody could get in to Malibu. Oh God, it was ages. I think this must have been the 8th or 10th day he came to visit, and people was still trying to get in and see their homes. But if you wanted to go in, you couldn't drive it. You could walk in and you could walk out. They would let you do that at that stage. But, people were desperate. And we worked out and we were closed and shut off, at road points and roadblocks because he was there. And everybody was so angry and furious that this man had turned up. Yeah. They started making signs and honking, but it was all. And then he drove up to Pepperdine, and nobody saw him really. Yeah,
jeez, yeah. Well, let's switch gears to a more positive look at this. So, this interview obviously is about photography and the documentary process. I'm really curious to learn about that. In the story that the Phoblographer penned, that this interview is sort of associated with, you mentioned that there was. Before you started this project, there was a mountain of research and homework that you had to do before clicking the shutter. Take me through that, because a lot of people will say, just go out there with your camera, get a little Fuji camera and go snap some pictures, then write the story. It wasn't that simple, right? Take me through that part of it, the research.
No, I love researching. To me, researching is as important as taking the picture. And I would say if you take the period I work on issues, I spend 70 to 80% researching before, that takes up the time of, I shoot 20% probably. Mm-hmm. If I, as an example, I did a story on tree mortality in the Sierra Nevada mountains. I got reached out to biologists, to National Forest Services, to national parks. I spoke to the Sierra Nevada Conservancy. They connected me to people. Then I got through to forest management in a specific section. Then I spoke to firemen and fire crews that set prescribed burns. And then I go. And then I ask more questions again. I reached out to experts on UC Davis and that new climate experts or climate scientists at UCLA. There's two things I think that happens with research. First, I'm curious. I need to know, where am I going? What am I looking for? Because, the complicated thing about shooting climate change, in a way, it's transparent. It's not pink or purple, and it doesn't move around in cute little outfits and all. They're not sexy. I have to go and see what I shoot to help tell this story, to help explain something that can be very complex and subtle, or it can be really extreme, but how do we connect it and make it right and connect the science and the dots?
Yeah.
And then the other thing is speaking to people, learning from them, learning through their experiences, the landscape around them, what's happening. But again, you've got to really dig deep, because it's not obvious all the time. And often the very people that are affected and are feeling these effects don't really understand them necessarily, or think they're just sort of the natural progression of the environment around them. Mm-hmm. So then I get that information and that experience and that knowledge, and then I go back and then I do more research and then go, I might find a professor that knows about something I sort of was curious about while I was out there. I try and ring him or her and go, I was just on this trip to look at this one specific issue. I'm curious what your experience has been. What do you see? What do you feel? And it's really interesting because I become the go-between. Often the scientists that works on specific issues have never been to these places. And I kind of have the experience of seeing and knowing the science. So it's really interesting.
Now, do you feel like you become an expert? Like if you're talking to a professor or a climate scientist or someone that knows more than you do about the topic, of course you're absorbing information. But on the opposite side of it, like you said, there are people that don't really understand what's happening to them. They're just sort of rolling with the punches. Do you find yourself in the position of educator when you go in with your camera and sort of explaining and being sort of an evangelist for climate change?
That's probably not a word I want to use. Yes, I don't believe in preaching in any way, shape, or form. I really go to listen. My job is to listen. Mm-hmm. And if people ask me what I think, then I'm honest. I tell them why I'm there. I tell them the reason. So, it's often very blatantly climate change issues. But they can be subtle climate change issues. It can be particular dust that's, exacerbated by drying conditions that are blowing in the wind and affecting people's health. So there can be very subtle little things. I tell them, but I would never preach. It's not my job. Most of the people I work with, I would it's more than 50-50 believe in climate change, but I also work with a lot of people that don't believe climate change is happening. And I also work with people that have, specifically in public health issues, and often end up in migrant communities, people that are here undocumented or, don't feel safe, and they're too scared to tell me what's actually happening to them, or they tell me in a very sort of roundabout way.
But see, that's where I want to understand it, because Mette, you don't strike me as a person that's shy, right? And you're passionate. I mean, your passion for this project comes through. So if you're not shy and you're passionate about a project, and then someone tells you, that thing you're working on, it's a myth. I don't really believe it. I want to know what that reaction is. Do you just internalize it and walk away, or do you confront and destroy? Like, what do you do? What do you do?
It really has to do. First, I think when I go out working as a documentary photographer / photojournalist, it is just not my job to tell my opinion. It just isn't, unless somebody really specifically asks me. And I've had people that really genuinely ask, that wants to know and wants to understand. And that's fantastic, because then I can go, okay, I'm definitely going to spend some time with you and give you the time of day to see what I'm seeing and my experiences I've had. But I'm not there to change their mind in a way. I just don't feel like in that moment it's not my job. But I've also had people be very aggressive towards me and say, this is, it's bullshit. You shouldn't be here. How dare you? And you're wrong. And this is the natural progression. There was ice age, now we hot, and now it's going to get cold again. Or it's all the normal progression of nature. I cannot be bothered to try and convince them, because if you're at the stage, especially, somewhat educated in America and you haven't worked it out, then I'm really the wrong person to tell you.
He's like, if you don't get it by now, dude, I'm not going to waste my time.
No, and it's like, the only thing I might say, we can choose to believe in science or not.
Yeah. Yeah, I would imagine it's a lot like religion, right? Because you're not going to change someone's mind in either direction to move from one religion to another or to believe in religion or whatever. It's almost like, banging your head against concrete, and you have better things to do, I would imagine, like, speaking to the people who believe you.
I don't think you can compare religion and science, because religion is philosophy and that,
but not comparing religion and science, but comparing the trying to convince someone of something, right? If you don't believe in the science or you don't believe in the religion, you're not going to convince them. It's not even worth your time, right?
And it's also something, because I am an atheist. I always really dislike people that wanted to change my mind in a religious way. I have no, full respect for anybody believing in whatever religion they believe in and what they practice. In fact, I appreciate it, and I love culture and religion for other people, not for me. But I don't want somebody to brainwash me about their religion, but I think that's where the science becomes different. I might have gone off track there a wee bit.
No, this is great. We are getting into the mind of Mette, so this is good.
Yeah, I don't want, I think there's a difference between about being educated and learning and being curious and wanting to understand better what goes on around us. To me, this is what this is about. We have to stop denying science. And, science isn't, and again, science isn't a god. It isn't like some things change and fluctuate and, it's not static. It moves because new things get discovered. But, I really don't know what to say to people that don't believe in climate change, because they just have to look around themselves. Look what's happening, just in the general news cycle every single day. Mm-hmm. And I always say to people, think about this. If you had fallen asleep 20 years ago and you woke up today and read the news, it would be so self-evident, because it would be such a shock to see what's going on. And if you read it and said, this is what's going on, this is why, this is what's happening, you'd go, yeah. But there's this slow degradation. So people are like, I feel like they're getting used to it nearly, and then we get used to being in shock and getting used to the news cycle. Mm-hmm. And then I think we shut off, and then we just go, oh, well,
Yeah, then you get to the point where you think, well, you know what? It's bigger than I am. I can't do anything about it, so I'm just going to live my life. Unless you're Mette, and then you pick up your camera and you go tell a story about it. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you was specifically about documentary work, right? We talked about the research that goes into it, which is a mountain. You said like 80+% of the time that you spent on this is spent doing homework before you even click the shutter. On the other end of that, do you feel like the work that you're doing is affecting change? I would imagine that's the main goal, is to raise awareness and to affect change. Do you feel like it's doing its job?
I think this is a particular difficult time to do that in America, and it's totally connected to the current government. If you have a government that denies climate change, it creates the perfect excuse for everybody else, regardless if they believe in it or not, regardless of how they feel about it, just to give them that little bit of an excuse to not deal with it, essentially. So I think I have really felt that. I felt when I started this project, while, when Obama was in government, there was a strong movement politically. It was in the news. Let's do stuff. Let's agree to the, to the Paris climate change accord. Let's move forward. But now we're going backwards, and that's affected me. I think less people are interested. I also think the news cycle is so busy with Trump that, what else is there to nearly write about, which is wrong. But I think there's a certain, denial attached to being able to not deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the scary part is I wanted to get your thoughts on this and your perspective. The whole head in the sand thing, where, you know what? It's not my problem, if I'm a millennial or younger or something, it's, or even if I'm older in my 50s, 60s, 70s, you know what? I had my time with the planet. It's over. I'm not even going to be here for the rising sea levels. Or if you're younger, you may have your head in the sand. You may be thinking, you know what? There's plenty of time to fix it. I'll go do something that I can affect. Do you see that, in your documentary work? Do you see that sort of bifurcation of opinions with people just sort of, it's not my problem? Or do you see people engaging in some cases?
No, I see younger people engaging much more. And I think it has to do with very closely with political beliefs. I think, unfortunately, climate change has become, a Republic-Democratic thing, especially in America. I don't think it's like that in Europe, fortunately, or unfortunately, that is that way. It's become political. So I think nearly that some people, regardless of their core real beliefs, they're going to say, well, I don't believe in that. Then it's economic beliefs. Some person believes, well, I'd rather have a tax cut or make more money or whatever, so then I'm not going to deal with this. So I don't think it's an age issue. I often think it's to do with what people do for a living and their fundamental economic beliefs. It's very closely tied to economics, I think.
I'm curious about how your camera, let's talk about gear a little bit. So I'm curious about, in a lot of other genres or photographers from a bunch of other genres that I speak to, they tend to say, especially street photographers and photojournalism, obviously, but they'll say the camera acts as a passport into situations that they wouldn't ordinarily be able to get into or be welcomed into. In the case of this project, did you find that your Fuji camera allowed you to get in places that they would have said, nope, sorry, ma'am, you can't come in here?
Yeah, I think having the camera on me makes me feel like, I have a cape, maybe. No, I think a camera it makes me say, well, I'm here to do this, so that helps. At least see a camera. Yeah. It's a passport, yeah, and then I think I also have this other that might be my little piece of luck. Here in America, I'm a foreigner, but I don't think people can really place me. And I also speak Spanish. I grew up in Spain. So I kind of look like, I guess I look like, white American. But then when they hear me, I have a strange accent. And when I speak, especially to Latinos, they can hear my Spanish accent and they're confused. And I think actually that's one of my biggest passports ever. It's like, oh, who is this person? So they can't really judge me. They can't put me in a box, and that's really helpful.
That's good. That is your cape, not the camera.
Yeah.
The multilingual, your multilingual skills is your definite cape. So about gear. So which cameras did you choose? I know you're shooting Fuji, but which cameras did you choose for this particular assignment / job, and why?
So before we continue, you might want to have a break where you see me waving my hands. I shoot with 3 cameras. I also shoot with a Canon. Can I talk about all of that?
Absolutely. Yeah. We're not. This is not a commercial. You can talk about whatever you want.
Okay. No, just so you had an editing space.
Good. Yeah.
So I shot with 3 cameras. I shot with my Fujifilm, the XT2. Am I saying that? I'm really bad in that.
It is XT2.
My DX2 50S. And with my Canon 5D Mark IV. And a drone that I can fly, but I'm not actually, I have a license, I'm allowed to fly, but I'm not licensed to sell my images.
Oh, interesting. So I had that on my notes to ask you about that because it seems like a purpose-built assignment for flying a drone out there. Yeah. So how much did you use the drone when you're doing these shots?
I didn't, because I didn't use it that much. I did use it, but while there was still debris on the ground, it was so dusty. It was really the last thing I wanted to put my drone up into. And for some reason, I still think my camera is the best because I'm trying to get people. So the drone is great to get this wide one image. I mean, it's great for one or two images, but to me, having my still camera is still so much better.
Yeah, it's like the establishing shot in movies, right? You always see the wide shot to let you know where you are, then the medium, then the close up. But you're not going to stay on the wide shot the entire time, right? Unless it's some sort of Godzilla epic or something. Yeah.
No, and drone photography is incredibly fun. I love it. I mean, I could be out there flying my drone every day.
Yeah.
But it also takes a lot of time and a lot of battery. And, it's fickle, it's complicated. And also on the fire zones with falling trees and falling wires everywhere. I needed more people, and I'm always alone. I go out, I'm always alone. On the assignment for the Wall Street Journal, I had a fixer for the 2 days, but the rest of the time, it's me alone. And then I feel like the drone gets complicated.
Yeah, and it's more complex. I would imagine, sort of using a camera like, say, one of the Fuji cameras or the Canon cameras or whatever you choose to shoot with that day. It's simple. If f-stop, shutter speed, ISO, then you can concentrate on the story versus all this other stuff, right?
Yeah,
so,
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I'm curious about so you were shooting, like, what does a day in the life look like? I know, obviously, each day was different, but going out there, and what is the prep day, the prep before you go out to shoot a particular area? What does it look like when you're out there? And then when you come back, what do you do? Do you offload and back up and cull? And what's a day in the life of Mette?
So with the fire story only, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that really depended on when that was. So in the beginning, it was really fast. I was like scrambling to charge all my batteries, to literally go out with as many batteries as I could, get all the lenses in a hard case. I have a belt. I put an extra lens or two on. I have a very sexy fanny pack. I put my wallet, my keys, lip balm, everything, so that never leaves my body. Camera around my neck. I always have two bodies with me, and it's always my Fujifilm and it's my Canon. Mm-hmm. And then what happened directs to which camera I pick up. My preparation is when I was going out, when there was mandatory evacuation. Mandatory means, if there's roadblocks, nobody can get in. Some people stayed, but, it's a fire zone, and the firemen are out there putting out fires still, and utilities out there trying to get, power lines off the ground and all this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Then, it's batteries, making sure you have cleaned the lenses as best you can, and you run. And then I'd come home, download, and make them look as good as possible and get them off to New York, and then just start again at some ridiculous hour the next morning and go out and then get back at, I'd be back at like 9, 10 at night, and then work till 11, 12 and get up at 6.
Wow. Now, are you post-processing your own work, or are you sending the raw files off to New York and letting them handle it?
No, you don't do that. You do your own work. You don't send any raw files to anyone. No.
Okay, good. Okay, so you handle that and you send them the final files that you want them to see.
Yeah.
Cool. This is crazy. How do you feel about the project? And how do you, from the beginning of doing this project all the way through to now? How do you feel, if any, has this project changed you as a person? Do you feel like, I mean, obviously you're smarter. We get smarter every day. But do you feel like it's fundamentally changed the way you think about things?
Yes. This project has profoundly changed me. I think I've poured my heart and soul into doing this. I've learned so much about climate change. I've learned a lot about people, how it's affecting them. But I think if anything, I have become really good at seeing these things and understanding them. And I think I've developed as a photographer. I think I've developed as a human being, seeing this. And I think, as you know, I think documentary photographers are just, it's the weirdest job in the world. You know, you're going into people's homes and I end up in places I've never imagined I would be. But I feel so lucky. Like, I get to see stuff. I get to be present. I get to be part of the world and joining in from very subtle, complicated issues to, what I saw at the, Wildfires in Malibu when I got in and saw people on the beaches, trying to, they were sending boats out with food and supplies and water and generators. Being able to see that, being able to be, documenting prescribed burns and tree mortality in the Sierras, and they let me set fires. Like, I was actually got to light the forest up. Wow, that's amazing. That's my dream and my happiness right there.
Yeah, and this is a body of work that will hopefully change minds and live on. Do you have any? What are your next plans? What's the next project that you're going to tackle?
I'm not going to tell you.
Come on.
No, well,
you can give us a hint. Don't tell us exactly. Give us a little.
No, I'm way too honest. So then I will tell you. I'm over 50. And that has really changed how people react to me, speak to me, and how the world treats me, and especially as a woman. So I really wanted to look at this. So I'm looking in, actually I want to do with my Fujifilm GFX S50 or whatever it's called. I'm so bad at this.
That's awesome.
I want to do a portrait project with women above 40 and where they are in their life, their successes, and who they are right now in the world. And I think it's something I have felt coming, and I'm in the middle of working on just starting shooting it and not speaking really. I'll reach out to editors when I have a couple of shots and say, do you want to do this with me? But I just want to get going because I'm excited about the camera and I'm excited about this project.
I love it. That's all it takes. So take your passion from one area and focus it on another area. You just to wrap things up, and like I said earlier, your passion for the stuff that you're working on clearly comes through, right? So for the photographers that are out there watching this and they're trying to figure out a project like this to sort of sink their teeth into, what advice would you give them, in terms of things to cover and where to point their camera?
You mean as ideas rather than as a photographer, like how to find a long-term project?
Yes, exactly. How to find a long-term project, how to get inspired, how to get passionate about something. Well,
I think, you got to go with you got to find something you really like. Don't go and do what you think you should like. A lot of people go and think, well, this seems cool, I should like this. No. You could go and shoot your neighbor's dog for the next 3 years, and I tell you, it could be interesting. What I'm trying to say is you have to absolutely dedicate yourself. You have to be really truthful and honest. It's painful. It's exhausting. It's such dedication. And you have to love it. You really have to love, and really more than anything, profoundly care about what you're going to go and photograph and the people you're going to engage with. And for me, that has become the land and the people I photograph. To me, just as much as I'm photographing and hoping to talk to people about climate change and tell all these stories, it's also a love letter to California and to our environment and nature that we need to protect.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. A love letter to California. That should have been the title. That was it. A love letter and pictures to California. Mette, if people want to see your work, we'll obviously have some photos, a photo gallery associated with the blog post. And in this video, I've been overlaying, much of your work here or from this particular project. But if people want to see more of it and more of what you're working on or connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
follow me along on Instagram, which is my name, at Mette Lampcov, Mette, Lampcov, Lampcov, and my website. But I think my Instagram is probably where I end up doing the most. I'm fantastically average at keeping my website up, except for when I do have assignments, they end up on news on my website.
Wait, did you just say fantastically average?
Yeah.
See, that's perfect. You are clearly a writer. I love that. I'm going to have to borrow that. Fantastically average. That's perfect. All right. Mette Lampcov, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure having you, and congratulations on the project that you're working on. And please come on again for the next project when you're ready to talk more deeply about it. So I'm excited for that. That sounds really interesting.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me on, and also for caring about the story. It's an incredibly important story, and caring about the project really means a lot to me. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Mette, have a good rest of your week, and we'll talk to you next time.
Yeah.
See ya.
Thank you so much. Bye.
This is TWiP.